Okay, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into a really, really interesting report that just came out.
Yeah.
All about AI safety and governance, and
Yeah.
it's a pretty dense report, but
Yes.
I think it's got a lot of really important information, especially for people in the policy world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really interesting about this is that it brings together insights from like all these different stakeholders. So you've got like the leading AI labs,
Right.
research institutions, policymakers from all around the world.
Yeah, it's kind of like a global summit on AI almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Which makes sense. I mean, this is a
Yeah.
technology that's going to impact all of us.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the key things that the report highlights right off the bat is just how quickly AI is evolving.
Right.
I mean, like the pace of development is just
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
it's incredible. And I think, for policymakers, it's a huge challenge because by the time you put regulations in place,
Right. Everything's changed.
things have already changed.
You're always playing catch up.
Exactly. And, I think a prime example of this is they talk about this new AI model called O3.
Okay.
And this model is demonstrating like really incredible abilities in terms of scientific reasoning programming.
So like beyond
What we've seen so far.
anything we've seen before. And so, it's kind of mind-blowing to think about what this means, but it also raises a lot of questions about, okay, well, what are the potential downsides here?
Yeah, what does this mean for like
Yeah.
the average person? Not just people who are like in the tech world.
Right. And that's, I think, one of the, the big things that the report highlights is that, with these increasing capabilities comes an increasing risk of misuse.
Right.
And so they talk about, everything from cybersecurity attacks to the creation of harmful content,
Okay, so this is getting into like the potential.
the dark side.
Yeah, the dark side of AI. The dark side. Yeah, exactly. And I think, it's important to think about because, we're developing these tools that are incredibly powerful,
Right.
but we also have to recognize that they could be used for malicious purposes.
It's almost like we're giving out superpowers, but we don't know if people are going to use them for good or for evil.
Exactly. And, I think the report really underscores the need for robust risk management frameworks.
Okay.
But I think one of the key takeaways is that existing methods, while they might be useful for addressing some issues, they might not be enough for the more complex systemic risks that we're seeing with advanced AI.
So we need a whole new playbook.
We need a whole new playbook, exactly.
Yeah, AI safety.
And it's not just about thinking about, how do we prevent individuals from misusing AI? It's also about thinking about what happens if these systems fail
Right. Okay.
at a larger scale. And so one of the things that they highlight is this concentration of power in the AI industry where you have, a small handful of companies that are really dominating the market. Right. So it's like putting all our eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And, what happens if there's a single flaw in a system that's being used by, millions or billions of people?
What? I mean, that could have.
It could have cascading effects across all these different sectors.
Mm.
You think about finance, healthcare, transportation. All of these things are increasingly reliant on AI.
Right. It's a little unsettling.
It is. It's unsettling. And I think, it really highlights the need for us to be thinking carefully about
Yeah.
how we're developing and deploying these systems.
So it's like we're becoming more and more reliant on AI, even though we don't fully understand it or the risks involved.
Right. And there's another layer to this too, which is the environmental impact.
Oh, right.
The energy consumption, the resources that are required for AI development.
AI could be contributing to climate change.
Potentially. And, the report really urges policymakers to, start considering this as well, because it's not just about, the immediate risks of misuse. It's also about the longer term impact on the planet. Wow, this is a lot to take in. It seems like AI is moving faster than our ability to like even understand it, let alone regulate it.
And I think, despite all the hype around AI, it's important to remember that it still has limitations.
Right.
There's a lot of debate about whether, current AI systems are truly intelligent, whether they actually understand concepts, or if they're just really good at mimicking
Right.
human intelligence.
So are they actually intelligent, or are they just masters of illusion?
That's the million-dollar question. And, some people believe that, if we just scale up computing power,
Right.
give these systems more data, that eventually they will reach human-level intelligence.
Right.
Other people argue that, there are fundamental limitations to the technology, that you can't just brute force your way to true AI.
So it's kind of like the nature versus nurture debate, but for AI.
Exactly. And, I think that the answer to that question has huge implications for how we approach AI safety and governance.
Right. Because if we're dealing with systems that are actually intelligent, that's a whole different ballgame.
It's a whole different ballgame. And, that kind of brings us to another fascinating concept that the report touches on, which is open weight models.
Oh, yeah. I've heard whispers about those. What are those all about?
So imagine, you're on a committee and you're tasked with figuring out how to regulate these open weight models, which are essentially AI models, where all of the inner workings, the code, the parameters, everything is publicly available.
So it's like open sourcing an AI.
Open sourcing AI. And so on the one hand,
It sounds great for collaboration.
it's great for collaboration. It's great for innovation.
Yeah.
It allows researchers to build on each other's work. But on the other hand,
Anyone could get their hands on it.
anyone can get their hands on it. And so, what are the risks of misuse there?
Right. So it's like giving everyone the blueprints to a really powerful tool,
Exactly.
but hoping that they'll use it responsibly.
Hoping they'll use it responsibly. And that's a really tricky balancing act.
It-
And, I think the report really highlights that, open weight models have the potential to be a really powerful force for good. They could democratize access to AI.
Yeah.
But they also present some unique challenges for policymakers who are trying to mitigate the risk of misuse.
Okay.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's a tough one for sure. And speaking of tricky balances, the report also really digs into this whole challenge of managing AI risk. And it's not just about, stopping the bad guys from doing bad things with AI. It's also about how do we anticipate unexpected consequences? How do we build safeguards into these systems from the ground up?
So it's not just about slapping on airbags after you've already built the car.
Exactly. It's about thinking about safety from the very beginning.
Right.
They talk about this concept of safety by design,
Okay.
where you're baking in these considerations into the entire development process.
Okay. That makes sense. But how do you even begin to evaluate the safety of something as complex as AI? I mean, it's not like you can just, crash test a self-driving car.
It's a huge challenge, and the report actually points to this as one of the major gaps. The lack of comprehensive evaluation methods for AI safety. I mean, we're essentially deploying these systems without fully understanding.
It's like releasing a new drug without testing the side effects.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
Yeah.
And so, they really emphasize the need for robust evaluation methods that can identify these potential risks before an AI is released into the wild.
So instead of waiting for AI to go rogue, we need to figure out a way to predict and prevent those rogue behaviors.
Exactly. And so, researchers are exploring a lot of different techniques to try to make AI more trustworthy.
Okay.
One approach that they talk about is adversarial training.
Adversarial training.
So, instead of thinking about it as pitting two AIs against each other, think about it more like, giving an AI a flu shot.
Okay. You're intentionally exposing it.
Okay, so you're giving it bad data.
Bad data, harmful inputs.
To make it more resilient.
Exactly. And so by training an AI on these adversarial examples, you're essentially forcing it to learn how to handle unexpected or malicious data.
It's pretty clever.
It's a clever approach, but it's not foolproof. I mean, you can't anticipate every possible attack.
Right.
And so adversarial training is really most effective when you have specific examples of the types of attacks you want to defend against.
Okay.
But for, truly novel attacks, it might not be enough.
Right.
And so that's why it's often combined with other techniques like machine unlearning.
Machine unlearning.
Yeah.
Is that like hitting the undo button on AI training?
In a way, yes. So machine unlearning is about removing specific unwanted capabilities from an AI system.
Yeah.
So for example, let's say you've trained an AI model that can generate, really realistic images.
Right.
But then you discover that, it can also be used to create deepfakes.
Which could be used for malicious purposes.
That's a problem.
So with machine unlearning, you could potentially remove that deepfake generation capability.
Okay.
While preserving the image creation ability.
So you're kind of like surgically removing a tumor
Exactly.
without harming the surrounding tissue.
It's a powerful tool, but unfortunately, it's not always that straightforward.
Okay.
A lot of the current machine unlearning techniques, they often suppress these unwanted capabilities rather than fully removing them.
So they're still lurking in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's like they're pushed into the background, but they're still there.
Waiting for the right trigger.
Waiting for the right trigger to resurface. And so, it really highlights the ongoing challenge of ensuring AI safety, even with these, very sophisticated techniques.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings us to another, really critical aspect of AI safety, which is monitoring and intervention mechanisms.
Okay, so it's not enough to just build good AIs. We also need to have systems in place
Keep
to
an eye on them.
keep an eye on them
Make sure they're behaving themselves.
and intervene if things start going wrong.
Right. So think of it as like a safety net for AI.
Okay.
This could involve, real-time monitoring of AI systems to detect anomalies, unexpected behavior.
So we're not just like watching what the AI is doing. We're also kind of like looking under the hood.
Exactly. We're monitoring the inputs, the outputs, the internal processes.
Make sure everything is working as intended.
Right. And then if something, seems fishy, that's where the intervention comes in.
Okay, so like a kill switch for AI. So hopefully it never comes to that. But,
Right.
the idea is to have mechanisms in place to prevent, catastrophic consequences.
Okay.
So this could involve, flagging the issue for human review.
Right.
It could involve automatically shutting down the AI or even, rolling back to a previous safer version.
So someone's got their finger on the button just in case.
Hopefully not literally.
All right.
But,
okay.
the idea is to have those safeguards in place. But how do you ensure that those safeguards are effective, that they can't be circumvented?
That's the million-dollar question. And I think just like with any security measure, there's always a risk that someone's going to find a way to bypass it.
Right. It's a constant arms race
It is.
between the people trying to secure AI and the people trying to weaponize it.
And this kind of leads us to another area where AI safety and governance get particularly tricky, which is privacy.
Ah, yes. Privacy in the age of AI.
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms.
It is a whole other can of worms.
And the report dives pretty deep into this issue and really explores, the unique challenges that AI poses to our personal data.
Okay, so what are some of the biggest concerns there?
Well, I think, one of the things to consider is just the sheer amount of data that these AI systems require.
Right.
They are data-hungry beasts, and they often require access to very sensitive personal information.
And we're generating so much data these days just by, using our phones, browsing the internet.
It's incredible.
It's like a digital fingerprint.
Yeah, and AI can use this data to create, a remarkably detailed profile of you,
Right.
your habits, your preferences, your political views.
Yeah. It's both impressive and a little creepy.
It's how much they can glean.
From just seemingly mundane data.
Exactly. And so, this raises some serious concerns about, okay, well, how is this information being used?
Right.
Both by the companies that are developing these AI systems, but also by, malicious actors who might gain access to it.
It's like having a superpowered detective constantly analyzing our every move.
It's a bit unsettling.
Yeah.
And, the report highlights a number of specific privacy risks in the age of AI.
Okay, like what should we be most worried about?
Well, I think, one of the big ones is AI-enhanced surveillance.
Okay.
So imagine a world where, it's not just governments that can spy on us,
Right.
but, anyone with access to these systems.
It's not just Big Brother anymore.
It could be anyone.
It could be anyone with the right AI tools.
Exactly. Imagine a stalker using AI to track someone's movements,
Right.
to analyze their social media posts to predict their behavior.
Oh, that's scary.
Or an employer using AI to monitor their employees' every keystroke.
It sounds like something out of a dystopian sci-fi film.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. The report also talks about the potential for AI to be used for discrimination.
Oh, right.
We've already seen examples of AI systems perpetuating existing biases,
Right.
leading to unfair outcomes in areas like loan approvals, job applications, even criminal justice.
So it's like having a digital gatekeeper that is judging us based on, preconceived notions.
Exactly. And so, it really underscores the need for transparency and accountability in these systems.
So it's not just about making AI safe. It's about making sure it's used ethically
Right.
and responsibly.
And that's a much harder problem.
It is. How do we actually achieve that?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. And the report doesn't, offer any easy solutions.
Right.
It acknowledges that there are no quick fixes.
Right.
This is a really complex issue.
So it's not just about, writing a few laws or creating a new regulatory agency.
It's much deeper than that. It's a more systemic issue.
Okay.
And so, they talk about the need for a multifaceted approach
Okay.
that involves, collaboration between policymakers, researchers, industry leaders, civil society.
So like a global task force dedicated to keeping AI on the straight and narrow.
Exactly. And this task force needs to be proactive, agile, adaptable,
Right.
constantly adjusting to this rapidly evolving landscape of AI technology.
Okay.
And this is where I think the novel notions segment of the report gets really interesting, because they start to explore some of these hypothetical scenarios
Okay.
that really push our thinking about the future of AI safety.
I'm intrigued. Let's dive into those novel notions. What are some of the scenarios they present?
Well, one that I found particularly thought-provoking was this idea of an AI security dilemma.
AI security dilemma.
Yeah. So this scenario challenges us to think about what happens when the very tools that we develop to protect ourselves from AI-driven attacks
Right.
become potential weapons themselves.
So it's like building a shield that's so strong, it could also be used as a battering ram.
Exactly. Imagine an AI system that's capable of identifying and exploiting any vulnerability in any system.
Okay.
I mean, it could be used to defend against cyber attacks,
Right.
but it could also be used to launch, devastating attacks of its own.
So how do we control that? How do we
Yeah.
prevent it from falling into the wrong hands?
That's the dilemma, and it's a question that, policymakers, researchers, even philosophers are grappling with.
It's a lot to consider.
It is, and it really highlights the complexity of this issue.
Yeah.
Every solution that we come up with
Right.
seems to create new problems.
Like a game of whack-a-mole.
Exactly. But I think by thinking through these scenarios, we can at least start to anticipate some of these challenges
Right.
and develop strategies to try to mitigate the risks.
So it's about being proactive rather than reactive.
Exactly. And I think the novel notions segment really encourages us to move beyond, these simple solutions and really embrace the complexity of this issue. It's a call to action for all of us to think critically
Right.
about the future that we're creating.
And speaking of thinking critically, the report also presents this other novel notion that I found really kind of unsettling, which is this idea of the erosion of trust
Oh, yeah.
in a world that's saturated with AI-generated content.
Yeah, this is a really insidious scenario.
It is.
As AI becomes more and more sophisticated at creating realistic images, videos, text,
Dude,
how will we know what's real and what's fake?
I mean, it's already getting hard to tell.
It is. And now imagine a world where any piece of information, any image, any video, any document
Right.
could have been generated by AI.
So like living in a hall of mirrors.
Exactly. You can never be sure what's real and what's an illusion.
That's a pretty bleak outlook.
It is. And I think, this erosion of trust could have really profound consequences for society.
Right. If we can't even agree on basic facts,
Right.
how can we have, meaningful conversations, let
Exactly.
alone make informed decisions about the future?
It's a recipe for societal breakdown, for polarization.
Yeah, everyone retreats into their own echo chambers, convinced that they alone possess the truth.
That's the nightmare scenario.
It is.
And it really highlights the urgent need to address this potential impact of AI on trust and truth.
So what can we do? How do we prevent this dystopian future from becoming our reality?
Yeah, that's where things get really challenging. And there are no easy answers, but I think, the first step is acknowledging the problem
Right.
and starting to think critically about potential solutions.
Okay.
We need to develop technologies and strategies to authenticate information.
Right.
We need to educate the public about the dangers of AI-generated content.
Okay.
And we need to foster a culture of critical thinking and media literacy.
It's a tall order.
It is, but it's a necessary one, I think.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're standing at this precipice, right? On one side, you've got this incredible potential of AI to solve all these problems.
Yeah.
And on the other side, you've got these very real risks, the misuse, the unintended consequences, the erosion of trust.
Right. And I think the report does a really good job of highlighting that complexity. It's not just a warning about AI, it's also kind of a call to action, I think.
Right.
To say, okay, we need to be thinking carefully about how we're shaping this technology.
So where do we go from here? What can we do as individuals, as policymakers, as a global community
Yeah.
to make sure that AI is serving humanity?
Well, I think the report really emphasizes this need for a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
There's no single silver bullet solution here. It's about tackling the problem from multiple angles.
So unpack that a bit for me. What are some of the key recommendations?
Yeah, so I think one crucial area is education and awareness. We need to educate the public about the potential benefits and risks of AI. We need to empower individuals to understand how AI is being used in their lives.
Okay.
And we need to foster a culture of critical thinking about the information that people are consuming.
So it's about making sure that everyone's AI literate.
Exactly, not just the tech experts, right?
Right.
And this education needs to start early, in schools and universities
Yeah.
to prepare future generations for this world that's increasingly shaped by AI.
Okay.
The report also really stresses the importance of fostering international collaboration on AI governance.
Okay, so this is a global issue.
It is. This technology transcends national borders.
Right.
And so, we need to have a global perspective on how to address these challenges.
Just about climate change, right?
Exactly.
We can't solve it if only a few countries are taking action.
We need a coordinated effort from
Right.
the entire world. And so, they talk about establishing common standards, sharing best practices, working together to develop ethical guidelines.
That sounds like a tall order given, the current geopolitical climate.
It's not going to be easy, but I think the report makes a really strong argument that it's essential.
Yeah.
We can't afford to let national rivalries or, corporate interests hinder progress on such a critical issue.
So we need to put aside our differences and recognize that we're all in this together.
Exactly. And the report also emphasizes the need for continuous research and development.
Right.
We need to invest in research that explores the societal impact of AI,
Right.
that develops new techniques for ensuring AI safety and security, that addresses the ethical challenges.
So it's about keeping our eyes on the horizon, anticipating future problems.
Exactly. We can't afford to be complacent.
Right.
AI is a rapidly evolving field, and we need to constantly adapt our thinking and our approaches.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. A
Mm,
little unsettling at times,
right.
but, it's clear that AI is a powerful force,
It is.
one that has the potential to really reshape our world.
Yeah.
For good or for bad.
And I think the report really captures both the potential and the peril
Yeah.
of this technology.
So what does this all mean for our listeners? What's the key takeaway from this deep dive?
Well, I think the most important message is that the future of AI is not predetermined.
Yep.
It's not something that's just happening to us.
Right,
It's
yeah.
something that we're all shaping through our choices, our actions, our policies, our investments.
So it's a call to action, not a cause for despair.
Exactly.
Right.
We have the opportunity to create a future where AI enhances our lives, solves our problems, expands our possibilities.
Right.
But to do so, we need to engage in these informed, thoughtful, proactive discussions
Right.
about the ethical, the societal, the governance challenges that AI presents.
We need to be both optimistic and vigilant.
Absolutely. We need to be excited about the potential, but also aware of the risks.
And remember that the choices we make today
Yeah.
are going to have ripple effects for generations to come.
For
Well, we encourage our listeners to explore this report further,
Yeah.
dive into the research, engage in conversations about the future of AI.
Absolutely.
Links are in the show notes.
Yeah. Great resources there.
Stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
The future of AI is ultimately up to us.
It is.
That's a powerful message to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
We hope it's given you some food for thought and inspired you to continue exploring this fascinating, complex, ever-evolving world of artificial intelligence.